You wouldn't find a lawyer right now. There is no lawyer like that on the market.
Hello everybody, I'm Masha.
And I'm Xenia.
And this is Value Tokenized.
One of the jurisdictions that attracts a lot of attention these days in terms of security token offerings is Liechtenstein.
Our guest for today is Yanina Petrovskaya, an attorney from LLP Lawyers based in Liechtenstein. And she will give us a comparative overview of Liechtenstein and Switzerland as potential jurisdictions for doing a security token offering.
Hey, hi, thank you very much for joining us here today at Value Tokenized. So you are a lawyer specializing in jurisdictions like Switzerland and Liechtenstein. Can you tell us more like what attracts so much interest these days to these countries?
Just would like to introduce myself once again. My name is Yanina Petrovskaya. I'm part of the team of LLP Lawyers. We are Liechtenstein-based attorneys. We've been accompanying various blockchain projects. A couple of years ago, it used to be ICO with utility tokens, right now mainly STOs. Well, what makes this jurisdiction attractive to various blockchain projects is mainly flexibility and being open to new things which people don't know how to work with. Because a lot of jurisdictions, what you might have seen also in Russia, also in China, or in India, if people don't understand how the technology works, they don't want to look into it. It's really part of mentality in Switzerland and Liechtenstein that they don't really prohibit things from the very beginning or ban them. If they don't understand it, they try to work it out to understand, and that's the main advantage. And starting from the first ICO guidelines, they've been quite fast, I would say. That's the major advantage of smaller countries. As you see also, like all the smaller countries, they are much faster than the larger countries in adopting legislation for STOs or other sort of blockchain projects, both Malta, Gibraltar, right now also Luxembourg. It's really an advantage of a smaller country that you can be faster than a larger country is.
But talking about, for example, fundraising and actually tokenized securities, so does it not, like being a small country, does it not limit the issuer to a certain extent?
That's a major difference between Switzerland and Liechtenstein. The thing is that Switzerland is not a part of the European Union, and it's not a part of European Economic Area, which means that most of the financial products that they offer are not really allowed to be traded on a European market.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So partly that's true. But also, you should also take into account that for a lot of professional market players, like for hedge or VC funds, it doesn't really matter. They're also represented in Switzerland, or they can purchase security token via their brokers also in Switzerland. So for some consumers, it might be a restriction or a limitation, but for some consumers, it's actually not. So of course, countries which do give access to larger markets like Liechtenstein or Malta, of course, they have more advantages. So we're just launching your security token, issuing the prospectus for security token in Liechtenstein would give you actual access to the whole European market, which is just great. And that's why that's what we see. What is happening? A lot of projects, they're based both in Switzerland, and they do part of their operations in Switzerland. And then when they decide to go for security token to cover larger markets, with Liechtenstein you cover both European Union and Switzerland. Then they issue the security token in Liechtenstein, but they also still have some part of the operations in Switzerland. And I think it's a very good combination.
But so if you were launching an STO, would you choose yourself Switzerland or Liechtenstein?
It really depends. It really depends on the investors that you target. It really depends on the size of the project, because for some larger projects, like we would like to attract hundreds of millions, and they already have quite a good financing. Liechtenstein might be a little bit small because they're afraid that smaller jurisdictions, especially the jurisdictions that are part of the European Union, that they can be at certain points not really be stopped, but they can be influenced by the European Union. And you've already seen the ESMA report, which is a very positive and liberal one, I must say, because it really has a very liberal approach. They do not want to ban anything. They say we give it right now to the national authorities. They're responsible for that. And then at certain point, maybe we are going to have something for everyone in the European Union. But that is also the major concern and major uncertainty for some large projects, and they still prefer Switzerland to Liechtenstein. But it really depends. I mean, in terms of costs, we're running an STO and upkeep of the company, Switzerland. Well, on average, I don't want to offend anyone, and it's I should have said it at the very beginning that it's not any sort of advisory or legal consultation, but on average, it's still minimum 30-40% more than in Liechtenstein. So it's really up to the project. If it's a large one with world-known name, most likely they would prefer Switzerland to Liechtenstein. If it's a smaller one with a smaller budget, but they still would like to have a decent jurisdiction, not like issuing token on Cayman Islands with no regulation at all, then Liechtenstein is a good option.
And what are the estimate costs for doing an offering in Switzerland and in Liechtenstein?
Well, you mean if we just talk about issuing prospectus, because security token, well, utility token it's not really regulated. You go to FINMA, or in Liechtenstein you go to FMA, you get your non-action letter and you sell it to people. But what we've seen during the last at least 6 months, no one really wants to have utility anymore because investors are not interested. Neither large investors nor small investors. Like, it's not the perception of the market has changed. And for security token, it's more or less, well, legally in Switzerland, it's not really a security. In Liechtenstein, it's more like a security. They apply all the legislation to security token, like the standard security. You have to publish a prospectus. You basically sort of issue a security using a token. And for publishing prospectus, you have to have a company there. You have to have certain staff there, like at least a director. It also really depends on the setup, but you have to have a decent setup. You have to have a company. You have to publish a prospectus. Also other documents for investors. Depends a lot on advisors that you engage, because cost of the advisors, of the lawyers, can be really different. Like, I mean, in Switzerland, it could start from 50,000 francs to almost no limit, like 250, 350. It really depends on advisors that you engage, because right now there are like I would say at least 5 to 10 various law firms which already work with security tokens. Well, there are like 3 to 5 which work with security tokens also in Liechtenstein, and the prices could be also really different, like starting from 30-40K francs to also 150, 200.
A lot of projects are now looking into using some exemption. So in order to not publish a prospectus, at least if you look at US or at European Union as well. Talking about Liechtenstein, which exemptions apply and what are their restrictions?
It's either a limited number of investors or it's 1 million francs. Well, for some projects it could work. It could work.
Yeah.
If you just get 1 million financing, it's okay. Or you have a limited number of investors, but then they're not so many exemptions to be honest. So
Yeah.
anyway, you have to go for the prospectus.
And so, and for a project who is looking to publishing a prospectus and doing securities offering in Liechtenstein, what would be the process of starting the whole thing?
The first step would be getting a legal opinion and getting a first meeting with the regulator, in my opinion. First of all, of course, you have to have a business model behind your token, tokenomics, and it should be well worked out, because it doesn't really make sense to approach the regulator with having nothing, because they would say, okay guys, go back home. They're really nice, they're very open-minded, they're very open. Anytime you would like to get a call or appointment, we talk with them every day. We get if we do not reach someone, they call us back. We can have a meeting within a week, but you still have to do your homework. I mean, if you are going to raise money from investors, if you're going to raise millions from investors, you still have to show something. And both Switzerland and Liechtenstein, they really care about the integrity of the market. They really care about investors' protection. So they really have to see that you are going not to just collect investors' money and run away. They really have to see that you're serious about what you do, that you have a decent business model, that you really know what you're going to spend the money for. And it's much better when, before starting even with the prospectus, you have all these things worked out. Then it makes it easier for lawyers to go to the regulator and say, well, that seems to be, for example, a token on companies' shares. That is the business model. That is the technical part. We have pretty much everything. Here is the legal opinion on what the token is. What is the legislation that it can be applied to the token. Basically, we can start with preparation of the prospectus. So if you are already well prepared, if you've done your homework, it makes it way easier for both lawyers, regulators, and advisors. But if you just that happens with a lot of projects, with a lot of blockchain enthusiasts that they really love to do the work or do all the marketing and not really think about the business model, how you spend the money, how you monetize everything. Then it makes it way longer and difficult to get the whole prospectus done with the regulator.
And you mentioned investors. So do you see actually interest from investors in the region into tokenized security?
That's a very good point, because I've been talking to various hedge funds and VC funds and private individual large investors. Also, like at the beginning of this year, there were a lot of events in Davos. I've been also speaking at the Investors Summit in St. Moritz. And it's really interesting to see how different the opinions are about security tokens. Because some of them say, yes, we are going to look into it. Actually, we are already invested in some of security tokens, especially some American hedge funds. And some say, we don't understand what it is. We see large uncertainties in terms of regulation, which is true, because every country does right now whatever they want, and it's like really patchwork regulation all over the world. And they say these are too many uncertainties for us. We cannot really invest our investors' money into this product. until it's really regulated. And a major concern is also secondary market, because right now, to be honest, there are very few give you the opportunity to trade your security tokens. This is a major concern. Also, well, there are a couple in the US. I don't see so many in Europe. So also a couple which are just starting their operations, and that's a major concern, because for all the serious professional investors, they have to invest into liquid assets, which means that they should.
Promise of security tokens is liquidity.
No,
but they won't
I mean,
like magically bring liquidity.
Once you tokenize something, on one hand, it's easier to transfer. But on the other hand, if you don't have a secondary platform, a secondary market, a platform where you can sell it to everyone, or not really to everyone, but at least within a certain region where you're allowed to trade it. And for those platforms, they all have to have broker-dealer licenses, and it takes from like half a year to a year to get it done. And it's a lot of investment in terms of money, efforts. You have to build a decent team, and you actually have to have a background in finance. So we see right now, on the one hand, we see like really blockchain enthusiasts trying to get these platforms done, trying to get the licenses for the exchanges to list security tokens. But on the other hand, we also see larger market players, like people who already have licenses for various types of traditional securities to trade, that I think that they're going to join this market maybe already at the end of this year, maybe a little bit later. But it's a major concern of larger investors, that they don't see really the opportunity.
I think Switzerland Stock Exchange 6, they recently announced that they want to go more into blockchain. So that looks promising.
That's very promising, but it doesn't mean if they started the work, it would take at least half a year or a year before they start the operations, because it's both. It's not easy. It's new land for everyone, for both the regulators and all the people involved. And you have to get all the operations set up, both from legal perspective, from a regulator perspective, and from a technical perspective. So it's great. 6 joining the whole movement is a great sign. I see all the larger players joining right now. Some of them really, they don't really talk about it, but they're already doing their homework. And I really believe that at the end of the year, at the beginning of the next one, we'll see some larger platforms joining the market. But for now, that's major concern for the investors, for larger hedge and VC funds to invest in the system.
And there is an opinion that right now the projects that are looking into raising money through like tokenized securities, like tokenizing themselves, are the projects that are not good enough for traditional VC funding, and they can't go through the ICO way because it's not already a thing. Do you think it's right, or it's maybe not the most projects? Yeah.
That's one of the opinions that I've also heard from some of the hedge funds. They say, STO is something between the ICO and IPO. So it's not that easy. It gives sort of protection to investors, but it's still not that difficult as IPO, and it's not that costly. So it's meant to give opportunities to especially startups and small and medium enterprises to get easier financing to grow. But a lot of hedge funds say, money shouldn't be that easy to get money from investors, you know. And maybe STO is going to make it too easy. Some of them say IPO is really okay. If you would like to have investors' money, you have to do this, a lot of work, invest a lot of. But I think that it's also one of the opinions. What I've heard, at least from some of the influencers, also in the crypto valley, that the market is huge. I mean, it's several billions at least of market for the tokenized securities. And of course, at the beginning, there will be a lot of maybe not really quality projects, and the regulators and all of us, we will have to learn which projects to invest to and which not to invest to, or how to adjust maybe the regulation or the court practice to avoid some scammy projects to invest to. But in my opinion, it only needs time and practice, and then we will see whether the STO is really the new big thing or it's not. But as I say, when I look at the size of the market, and also when I see like some really large big sharks joining the market right now, I believe that they have some better overview of the market and the situation that I do.
Another big interest in tokenized securities is shown by real estate projects. And we see US starting to be active in this field. And what's the situation in Liechtenstein with it?
Well, that's what we are doing right now. We're actually working on tokenized funds, investment funds. We're working on tokenized their shares, while the fund itself invests into real estate, because, well, the major purpose of tokenizing real estate is also to make these type of assets more liquid. I really see that it has a future. There is a market there. Of course, there is the same issue with sometimes with secondary market. But I also see, for example, not only the funds that we work on right now, but I also see other projects working on tokenizing of real estate, token estate, for example. Yeah, we met just a couple of weeks in Geneva. They one of the largest Switzerland either real estate brokers or just companies which invest in real estate. They bought part of their stake of the tokenization platform. So, I mean, I'm not an economist myself. I'm not in the real estate area, but when I see larger market players, people who are really into the industry doing things like that, I think that they know what they do.
And there is another problem that we see a lot. Like, people claim that it's very hard to find reliable service providers for the new STO market. Like, everything that comes from tech providers, like lawyers, advisors, which are another like major problem. What do you think about this? Like, is it an issue, and what is needed to create this level of trust for the new players in the STO market?
I really think that the thing is that everyone is learning right now, both regulators and lawyers. It's very new. It's really brand new for everyone. You wouldn't find a lawyer right now who has done like 10 STOs.
Yeah.
There is no lawyer like that on the market. I would like to see one, maybe. Well, maybe only in the US, but not in Europe. And the thing is that everyone is really learning, and it's only learning by doing. And of course, those who do it for the first time, they go this way first, but they make the roads for other people who would join the movement afterwards. Of course, it's really, for those who do it the first, for the pioneers, it's the most difficult thing. There is nothing in this world like ideal advisor for us right now.
And how's the activities of advisors licensed in Liechtenstein and in Switzerland?
Do you mean the for attorneys, for lawyers, or for?
For all types, maybe they're also, you need to be a broker dealer to help with fundraising, right?
Well, if you do a private placement, you actually don't need anything. But if you do it for security, if you issue for other projects security tokens, then yes. If you publish a prospectus yourself, you should also take care that you do not fall on a broker-dealer license, because for a lot of types of tokens, you mostly would need one. So you either partner with someone who has a license, or you structure your token the way that you don't need a license. For advisors, for lawyers, you have to be attorney. You have to work with other attorneys, and that's a licensed activity in Liechtenstein. It's also licensed activity in Switzerland. So you actually need people which are qualified locally, first thing, and second thing, they have to have an office there. They have to we have to have an insurance, for example, for quite a large amount, and we have to fulfill a lot of requirements which are not that strict in a lot of jurisdictions. For example, I'm not really allowed to talk about the projects that we do.
Yeah.
I mean, I can publish on my homepage that we are working on an STO for tokenization of shares, and that's it. So I cannot really use the names, I cannot really use the logos. And there are a lot of restrictions for attorneys in Switzerland and Liechtenstein to work there. Also to things how we behave in public and what we say. Yeah, these are the things about attorneys work there. Security dealers, security or broker dealer license, we just discussed it in brief. That requires really a lot. I mean, seriously, if you're going to issue securities, tokenized securities, also, or just in general securities for other people, it requires a lot. You have to have a local office. You have to have a staff. You have to have staff experienced in financial industry.
And if you're, for example, helping with fundraising, so you're basically just bringing investors. For example, in US, you cannot get a commission for this unless you're properly licensed. And how does it look in Europe?
Well, I mean, if you do private placement, if you just a company project which talks to private investors, but you don't give a security token to them.
Yeah.
Then it's not really a licensed activity. It's not that strict in Switzerland. And
okay.
Yeah, then it's okay. But once you issue security token, then yes, for a third party, then it's a security dealer license. With commissions, it's a similar thing. Mostly in Switzerland and Liechtenstein, you should be really careful because working on a financial market, and also it's the same for lawyers. Commission either are prohibited or are restricted. That, for example, in Switzerland, lawyers are not allowed to pay commissions at all. It's considered to be conflict of interest. In Liechtenstein, they can, but mostly, well, it's also really restricted. Like you have to disclose it to the clients, and mostly also lawyers don't really like to do that. Not to not to commit any breach of professional obligations.
Yeah, I think, and maybe to sum it up and to finish our talk, can you maybe give your overview and your vision of the regulatory dynamics in the region, in Liechtenstein, and what we'll see coming in the next year or so?
Really looking forward to the Liechtenstein Blockchain Act. That's one of the major differences between Liechtenstein and Switzerland, because Switzerland is quite large, and most of the laws, they have to go through a referendum, which is on one hand is good, but on the other hand, it also makes it slower. What they've done, and you might have seen that already, was in the end of December, they've published guidelines, DLT, for DLT projects, which are really quality stuff, really detailed, very nice. In Liechtenstein, we are waiting for the Blockchain Act to come into force, because it will also help us create more certainties for what token is, how you transfer a token, how you store a token. That's also a very good thing. But in general, for the future, I believe that more countries will join the regulation, and there will be also maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, I believe there will be also something. Well, first there will be some recommendations on the FATF level. Last year they announced that there are some recommendations needed, so there will be some, but I don't think there will be restrictive because what I've read from their opinion, they do not really consider crypto to be major source for frauds or money laundering. There will be also something. There should be also something on the level of the European Union, maybe, or on the level of some international organization, but it needs years to come. So right now, I would say it's a paradise for smaller countries to attract the project, to attract the most interesting blockchain projects, and to really move ahead of larger countries with more favorable conditions and legislation. And yeah, one of them is Liechtenstein Blockchain Act, and we're really looking forward that the act would come into force. And then we're gonna see how it's going to develop further.
Yanina, thank you very much for joining us here at Valley Tokenized. Thank you for this interview, and we will talk soon.
Thank you.